Hey guys, welcome to the channel and welcome to Warhammer, and tonight is another live podcast. We are going live as I speak out to Twitch. You can see the Twitch chat as the video's already come on because I've already been chatting to the guys in Twitch. And these are done weekly now. You may have seen a couple of the other ones. Normally I have sort of co-hosts with me and they've ditched me tonight. I've got no co-hosts. I've got no Brom. I've got no Mikey P. I've got no one to talk to apart from the Twitch chat. This is why it was important I got the Twitch chat working this week because this is the only interaction I've really got. So as per usual, I chucked a topic out to the Patreons on Discord on Friday, and I gave them a topic to talk about and asked them to come up with some solutions, some answers, some questions, etc. And always they're the guys that feed me the content now. That's part of the bonus of being a patron to Warhammer, is you can have direct input into the content at the end of the week on the live podcast on Sundays. Normally Sundays. Currently my shift pattern means that 3 or 4 Sundays I work days or not at all, so I can do this. And one Sunday I can't, so I'm on nights, which means I'll be normally doing a Monday. So it will be there or thereabouts. So Sunday it'll be 3 Sundays and Monday out of the month, near enough. If you're interested in sort of helping out with the content, with putting your ideas and stuff forward, then feel free to jump into Discord, join us on Patreon. There's a link below, because why not? The community is awesome, and there's going to be a little bit of an announcement I'm going to do in a minute that no one knows about. And unfortunately, for once, this isn't for patrons only. So they'll be all upset and raging at me. But I think it's a cool idea. And if any of you know Stylus from Discord, it's basically his idea. So you can blame him if you don't like it. So hey, but we're going to do that. We'll talk about that in just a second. So you can jump in Discord and support us that way via Patreon. Also, you can jump onto Twitch and follow us, and you get notifications when we go live every Sunday, and you can come and join us, and you get lots more chat, unlike the LVO coverage, where there's just 2 commentators sat there just baiting the people in the chat, basically. That's all they're doing. And not really talking about the games. Also, what you can do on Twitch is you can subscribe, and that's another way of supporting the channel financially. If you've got Amazon Prime, I've already told the guys earlier today, but if you've got Amazon Prime, then you can subscribe to Twitch by linking your Twitch to... I say subscribe to Twitch. You can subscribe to us on Twitch by linking your Twitch to your Amazon Prime, and it gives you a free subscribe to a channel every month. You only get one, and then you do have to refresh it every month, so it doesn't do it automatically like some do. So like I sub to a couple other channels, but not through Prime, and that doesn't do it automatically. That does do it automatically, but with Twitch Prime you have to go in and manually do it. So that's just another way of supporting the channel if you want to, but for free. So it costs you nothing if you've already got Amazon Prime. Obviously, if you haven't got Amazon Prime, don't go and get it, because I think it's like 80 quid or $100 and something. So don't do that, because it's not worth it for 1 month sub, I don't think. So our little bit of an announcement tonight before we move on to our main topic is that what we're going to do is, at the point in which this video goes live on YouTube, so which will hopefully be sometime tomorrow night / Tuesday morning, because I'm working tomorrow, so I've got to edit it in the evening, but it doesn't take long. At the point in which this video goes live on YouTube, we're going to drop a link on our Facebook page. That link is to our Discord, and for 7 days only, anybody who finds that link on Facebook can join Discord. At the end of that 7-day period, anybody who then hasn't taken out a Patreon subscription will then be removed. So you get a taster. You get a free taster, basically, for 7 days if you find it on the first day, or for 4 days if you find it a couple of days later. But you get a taster of Discord. If you like it, take a Patreon subscription up for as little as $2 a month, and then you get to stay. And you get to keep on and join in with the community and have a chat and all that kind of stuff. If you don't like it, don't pay for Patreon. Leave it of your own accord if you don't want to. But if you don't like it and you don't pay for Patreon, at the end of the 7 days, that's it, done. So you'll be sort of automatically removed. There's a way in which I can tell if people are or are not Patreon subs, so I'll do it all. I'll carry all the admin burden. Don't worry about that. It won't take me long. But basically, we're giving people a free trial. This is Stylus's ideas. I filmed a battle report for deploymentzone.tv with Stylus yesterday on Saturday, and it was his idea. So I think it's a great idea, and I thought, well, screw it. We'll do it straight away. We'll run it straight away this next week. So when this video goes live on YouTube, probably Tuesday, we'll drop the Facebook link up, and you can come and join us in Discord for free for 7 days. There you go. How about that? There's competitions in Discord. There's events going on. There's narrative chat. There's hobby chat. There's competitive chat. There's rules chat. There's all sorts of stuff. So hopefully people will come in. We're quite confident. Mike and I are very confident in the fact that once you've joined Discord, you won't want to leave, because it's just awesome. So fingers crossed that will pull people in to come and join our community. And the more people we've got, the more people we've got chatting about the hobby, the better it is. So that's our little sort of mini announcement. The other thing to remember is we are also one half of deploymentzone.tv. Yes, the Claw, if you want to, you can leave for 7 days, but I'd rather you didn't because you're quite popular. What we've also got is I'm one half of deploymentzone.tv, which I own with Winters SEO. So Winters from Winters SEO, and we basically chuck battle reports on every Tuesday on deploymentzone.tv. Me 1 week, him the next week. It's our website, so check out the website. It is a subscription-based service, so you can support us that way as well if you want to. That's really cool, and that's what Stylus was down filming with me for yesterday, was for deploymentzone.tv. There's loads and loads and loads and loads and loads more battle reports on there. I think there's 30 odd now. I think episode 34 was uploaded today, and episode 34, which goes live on Tuesday, is when I take my Chaos and I take on Simon from Discord's Ravenwing in a game which was just absolutely epic. Some quality moments in that. Simon will remember. That goes live on Tuesday. 6-7 turns of epicness. So look out for that. Check out the website. Let us know what you think. Cool. I think that's all the preamble stuff doing. Oh, the other thing I want to tell people, because I had a chat with Stylus about this on Saturday, and I don't think we tell people this enough. That is that actually, you don't have to be a subscriber to deploymentzone.tv. You don't have to be even a paying Patreon, although these both help because it's easy to get hold of me. Anybody can give us a shout if they want to come and film for Warhammer or for DZTV for battle reports. So we welcome almost everybody, almost anybody. Yeah, the only sort of prerequisite is you have to have a fully painted army. So feel free to drop me a line either on an email or on Facebook Messenger or something like that. If you're subscribers to Deployment Zone or your patrons, you'll get priority basically, and I'll try and organise with you guys quicker because I mean you're supporting us directly, right? So that will sort of make sense. So cool. Right, I'm going to go through some of the chat things quickly. Sounds like a great idea. Yeah, see, Stylus says it sounds like a great idea because it is his idea. Claw, you can leave, like I said. Mordian John, you are right. There is more puns than I care to imagine. The pun-off start in every different thread, and that's mostly Stylus' fault as well. Viking says, don't dare tempt me. Yeah, you should. You should come and join us. It makes sense too. Because it's just awesome, and once you've been in there once, you won't want to leave either because there's just too many cool people in there. So come and join us in Discord. Cool. Right. A subscription from Angus. Thank you for 7 months in a row, Angus. Thank you very much, and good evening. You've missed me rambling for the first 10 minutes about absolutely nothing, but hey. So tonight's topic, we dropped it in Discord, like I said on Friday to the patrons, and I said, look. At this stage, I thought Mikey was going to be joining me, and something we've sort of touched on before in little snippets of podcasts and sit and talks and even more Winters episodes and DZHQ episodes, and I've never really covered it properly as a singular topic. And that is a topic of Space Marines. And I mean bog standard Space Marines. I don't mean Primaris Marines. I don't mean Gullymen. I mean bog standard Space Marines. And the issues that currently exist with Space Marines. I mean, I've just come across from watching the LVO live stream, and the top 8 lists, there really isn't any bog standard Space Marines. There's lots of soup. There's 3 lists with Castellans in. There's 3 Ynnari lists. There's a Tau list and a Chaos list of some sort. I don't remember exactly which is in that Chaos list, but either way, there's 8 lists, no real Space Marines, which is a real shame, and it's really sad. So Space Marines are clearly in a really bad place. I would think, although some people have got some sort of differing opinions on that. So they're in a bad place, in my opinion. So I dropped into Discord and said, right, how do we fix Space Marines, guys? What do you think? What do you think's the problem with them, and how do we fix them? So I've sort of broke it down into 4 topics. You can't see my screen right now, but I do have a little screen that shows me my sort of magic. Do you know what? I'll show it to you quickly as a live switch. So this is my current organised screen. Are you ready for this? Look at that. Look at that actual detail, and it transitioned nicely. Actual detail that shows you that I've written it all down, and that's what I'm about to be going through in a minute. Okay, so we've got the Chaos list now. Abaddon cultists, some thousands of HQs, and something else I can't remember. I know that list, right? Cool, yeah, okay, I know that list. Is that not the one that's got like 3 Tzeentch Demon Princes in it as well? Maybe, I don't know. Cool. So. The problem with Space Marines, right? We all are aware that Space Marines have got lots and lots of problems. And for a while, one of the biggest things people have thought is the problem is the points. And GW seem to be trying to fix things in 8th edition with points changes. And I think points changes only work to a point. I don't think points changes work for everything. So Space Marines have had a points reduction. They've come down in points since the Codex dropped at the beginning of 8th edition. But that points is not the only problem with them. And there comes a point where if you continue to drop the cost of that unit, you then start to really mess around with other units. So, for example, if you reduce the points for Space Marines any further, you're then going to start to encroach on Scout-based territory. Now, Scouts are already more popular than Marines, so you could argue that dropping the Marines points would mean that Scouts are no longer as attractive and Marines are more attractive, but at one point there's going to be a sort of a tipping stage where Scouts are then no longer the important or the go-to choice, and Marines become the go-to choice. So getting that balance is really, really, really difficult. Because it's live, I have to drink as well, otherwise my throat goes dry, because I've also got Nurgle's Rot. But I didn't chicken out like Mike. So points drops aren't always going to fix it. So for me, one of the things we need to look at is we need to look at what their problems are initially. So what the main issue with Space Marines are. And one of the big things I think that we all do, everybody does, even I think to some degree competitive players, one thing we do which is terrible is we directly compare Space Marines to the lore and to the narrative. Now, if Space Marines in the rules of 40k was able to operate, or were able to operate the way in which they can in the lore and in the narrative, you'd have about 6 Space Marines on a table against your opponent's 1,500 point list, because they are walking demigods in the lore, and one of them will come out of a pile of 30-40 orcs victorious. Clearly that's not good for the game, and we already have Custodes, so there's already a faction out there that can kind of do that. So I don't think that that making them exactly representative of the narrative in the lore is the way to go, because otherwise you would end up with toughness 8 Marines. You know, I mean, I'm obviously exaggerating a little bit, but you get what I'm kind of saying. You end up with super powerful soldiers, and no one can stop them. We don't want that. We don't need that. So what's wrong with them? So there's a couple of things. First of all is their toughness, and it's not just their toughness as such. And I know that sounds like a stupid thing to say. A tough 4, right? And tough 4 is a decent standard. Guardsmen of 3, cultists of 3. A lot of people out there have suggested that what we do is we go to tough 5 for Marines. Maybe. There's a I think perhaps a better suggestion, and that is 2 wounds for them instead, which also equates to toughness, right? Because you've got to strip 2 wounds off of them instead of 1. But it sort of does the same thing. So just changing their toughness up has other effects. So for example, if you make a Space Marine tough 5, which arguably you could argue is worthwhile, you then have to make the whole of the Death Guard range toughness 6. Because they're currently tough 5, and Death Guard should definitely be tougher than Space Marines, because they're Death Guard. That's part of their rules and their law, right? They don't suffer wounds. They get parts of them blown off, holes blown through them, and they don't slow down. So if you change Space Marines to toughness 5, you then have to change the whole Death Guard range to toughness 6. So one answer is to improve their toughness by giving them an extra wound. Now, I think that works, personally. And I think that makes them definitely a lot tougher than they currently are. And I think you could then apply that to Death Guard and to Rubric Marines, and I think that still stays quite balanced and quite fair. Although Rubrics do have some added survivability with things like All is Dust and the natural vulnerable save, and Death Guard have some extra survivability with the what's it called, Disgustingly Resilient that they've got, and obviously they're tough 5 already. But there's a potential fix, is to give them 2 wounds. Then we talk about their damage output. Now the Beta Bolter rule is exactly the sort of thing I want to see GW do to improve Marines. The problem we've got with this is that the Beta Bolter rule doesn't just affect Marines, obviously. It's anything with the Adeptus Astartes or Heretic Astartes keywords, which means that it doesn't just affect Marines, it also affects the famous Primaris. Now, I am not going to disappear off on a Primaris rant for a change, I promise you. But the Primaris is, for me, part of the problem. Some guys in the chat, if you're looking at the screen, will already have alluded to this. Making Marines 2 wounds is essentially making them Primaris. And herein lies where I think one of the biggest issues is. So let's take Primaris as a individual unit. Let's take a squad of basic intercessors. So I've got here toughness, damage output. This is problems of Space Marines, costing points, alternative options, and inability to balance with lore, etc. So all those things. If you look at the intercessors who have -1 AP, the ability to take bolt rifles that have a longer range, that are better damage output. They have 2 wounds. They have 2 attacks. They are basically exactly what we would want a bog standard Space Marine to be. Really, aren't they? To be fair, and this is where the big problem lies. Sai in the chat's just said it. Primaris is what Marines should be, and they should be. And the problem with it is that we have this new law around Primaris, so they're not going to go away. And they are really true scale Space Marines. Now, myself personally, going out on a limb here, people will already know this. I would rather they didn't release the Primaris narrative. And what I would rather they did was basically just drop in Primaris Marines as true scale Marines and slowly transition. Stop making the old stuff slowly but surely. Allow people with the old size Marines to use the new rules, because why wouldn't you? I mean, it doesn't sell as many models for GW, but you probably keep the fan base happier, and your Marines are staying slightly closer to the narrative and the lore. Now, the problem gets, I suppose, is you would probably inevitably piss some people off who have got a whole army of old Marines, and now you're going, here are your new ones. So I thought, actually, I understand to some degree why they did the Primaris thing. Didn't agree with it, but I understood it. I understood why they did the Primaris thing. It kind of made sense, because you didn't want to annoy the fan base, because the Marines are their biggest seller, right? That's a fact. Marines are the biggest seller. You didn't want to upset the fan base by ditching all the regular Marines and going, here's your Primaris equivalent, so we're going to do something a bit different, and we're going to specialise with units like Hellblasters and Aggressors. We're going to specialise individual units. So they don't replace your bog standard Marines, but they are kind of a new version of, and here's the lore, the weak lore that surrounds them. So I thought, I get that tactic. Apart from the fact that the LVO, we've just seen the live, we've just seen the new releases around the whole Vigilus campaign and the new Chaos stuff. We've got new Obliterators. No complaints there. Definitely needed a model range upgrade. There's a new character. Of course there is. There's always a new character that comes out, and he looks glorious. I mean, I am super, super hyped about the new Black Legion stuff that's coming out. I think it looks amazing. I think adding that stuff to the Slaughter and giving me the option to run the Black Legion with Horus is awesome, and I've got lots of other plans as well. So they're amazing, and they're really, really cool. But then they've released 3 individual images of Chaos Space Marines. Now, I think that these, if I remember rightly from what I've read, I think that these are multi-part plastic Chaos Space Marines, okay? That's what I think. So, if that's what they are, I'm pretty sure I read it somewhere. If that's what they are also true scale multi-part plastic Chaos Space Marines that are replacing the old Chaos Space Marine range, which is the same size as the old Space Marine range. So why? Why did we do the Primaris thing if GW are now proving that they could just drop Chaos Space Marines in a multi-part plastic true scale kit and not care about the fact that people have got the old ones? I mean, it's not a massive problem, because let's face it, who in the last 10 years has bought old Chaos Space Marines anyway? They haven't. They've bought Cultists, Poxwalkers, Horrors, and that's about it, and Bloodletter Bombs, right? That's it. So, it's interesting. I don't think we needed the Primaris lore, and I think the problem we've got now is we've got Primaris Marines on one side, and we've got normal Marines on the other side, and Primaris Marines are where normal Marines should be. I think they have the rules that we want to have normal Marines. A lot of stuff in the chat was make them toughness 5. Again, I don't think that works because of so many other factions and where they are, where their toughness is. They don't have So they have 2 wounds, which I think they should do. They have 2 attacks, which I think Marines should do. They have -1 AP on their bolters. Bolters, read the narrative for bolters. Bolters, you point the gun, pull the trigger. They rip through things. They rip through things. Bolters, they tear chunks, and yet in the narrative, they can't penetrate flak armor. Flak armor. I would expect a bolt gun shooting at an orc to remove its save. There was another suggestion which I really love, which I came from one of our patrons in Discord, to make them a little bit tougher as well. Now, I think this is actually pretty awesome, and that is that power armor should ignore -1 AP weapons. Not ignore the weapons. The weapon still hits and wounds, but we don't worry about that -1. We negate that -1. And I think we could take that a step further. We could say that tactical dreadnought armor, Terminator armor, ignores -1 and -2 weapons. It's not a massive change. You apply it to power armor. So I don't know if there's a thing in the data slate that says they're wearing power armor, but you apply it to power armor. So you apply it to Adeptus Astartes in power armor. You apply it to Terminators. You maybe even apply it to Thousand Sons and Death Guard. In fact, I think definitely Thousand Sons and Death Guard as well. So you apply it to all Astartes, much like Bolter Beta Drill. Bolter Drill. And you basically say they ignore the -1. That's a massive toughness fix without going into 2 wounds and then being in Primaris territory, without going into toughness 5 and going into Death Guard territory, and something that you can also apply to Primaris Marines and you can also apply to Death Guard, etc. And it makes them that little bit more durable. -2 ignoring for Terminators, I think makes them much more durable. You're talking power swords and plasma guns before you're actually reducing or removing that armor save. And this goes into a bit of a rant from a couple of people in Discord when I dropped the topic on Friday. So when I dropped the topic on Friday, there was a lot more of a response than I think I first expected. There was a lot of people that got very worked up. And one of the big things that I drew from that when I was going through it all today and transferring it across to my OneNote was that people ultimately seem to think that what's messed up Marines the most, in fact, isn't necessarily their rules, but it's their interaction with the core rules. So when 8th edition dropped, the core rules changed quite drastically. Its AP -1 and -2 and -3 system didn't exist. You had AP1, AP2, AP3, and basically what that meant was if the AP of the weapon was equal to or lower than the armor save of the target, you didn't get an armor save. So AP3 ruined Marines. AP2 and 1 did the same. You removed your armor save. AP4 didn't. I don't know what we would consider AP4 as the equivalent to. Is AP4 the equivalent to -1? I would guess AP4 is the equivalent to -1. So AP4 at -1 wouldn't have affected Marines in 7th edition. Now it does. Massive difference. Massive difference straight away. So weapons that wouldn't previously hurt Space Marines now are hurting Space Marines. When you then couple that with the fact that weapons that couldn't wound in the past, Strength 1 or Strength 2 or whatever it was, I think it was something somewhere that couldn't hurt Marines and stuff, that now can hurt. You've got a lot more stuff that can wound Space Marines, a lot more stuff that can damage them. And they haven't had an increase in resilience or durability. That's a massive problem for Space Marines. Space Marines are supposed to be tough as hell. So that's the first core mechanic that's changed with Marines that I think has really stung them. So I think if we get rid of that, -1 for Space Marines, and I think adding a Terminators don't suffer the -2 or -1 penalty, -3 then starts to hurt them. And yeah, of course, I'm not saying -3 becomes -1. I'm not saying that. I'm saying -3 remains at -3. So if you get hit by a -3 weapon, it's still -3. Terminators still only get a 5+ save, and Marines only get a 6+ save. I'm just saying that -1 and -2, which are prevalent, they're everywhere, right? They exist all over 40k. Those rules, I reckon, we get rid of them for Marines and for Terminators, and that massively increases their durability. Damage output. This is interesting. I don't know how I would improve the damage output, and I'm not necessarily sure at the moment that we need to with the Beta Bolter Drill because their weight of fire is decent. I do wish they had a -1 naturally. I don't see why a bolt gun needs to be any worse than a bolt rifle. That's what they're called, aren't they? I'm sure someone in the Twitch chat will tell me in a minute. But a bolt rifle on a Primaris Marine, it's no different really to a bolt gun. It's bolt shells being fired out of our rifle at an enemy. So I think making bolt guns -1 and not changing Primaris Marines bolt guns, so they remain at -1, I think that goes some way to fix them as well. So first fix, ignore AP -1. Second fix, give them AP -1. So when they're shooting at orcs and guardsmen, they are starting to strip saves off. When they're shooting at other Marines, they don't, because they're Marines and they ignore -1. I mean, I think it's a good fix. I like that fix. I'm going to say it because it's my live podcast, and Mike's not here to tell me that I'm talking rubbish either. So, I mean, he's in the chat, but I can just remove him or delete him or something. So that's what I think is part of the fix. There's other 8th ed stuff that hasn't helped Marines very much, obviously. I think it might have been Toby in the chat, went off on a bit of a sort of rant about other 8th ed core changes, and Ganondolf and someone else all sort of pitched in and said, yeah, 8th has massively changed the way Marines work, and they have definitely changed for many different reasons. But I'm not going to go into all of the mechanics of 8th edition that have changed the way Marines work, because I don't think it's necessary. Costing points, they maybe could drop by another point or so. I think they'd be okay. But we're now going to go into some of the other suggestions to fix Marines, and these now become generic. This is not just about Power Armor Space Marines. Proud Beard's cleared up. Normal Primaris is -1, Stalker's -2, and the other one is -0. That's the Assault Bolter, right? So I'm saying don't change those, but give Space Marine bolt guns AP -1. In that same vein, for me personally, heavy bolters should be -2. They're a heavy bolter. So we're going to go in some of the Patreon suggestions to fix it. Now, I haven't put names to each suggestion because there's loads. You guys will know if it's your suggestion or not. There's loads of suggestions. A couple of them were duplicated. So what I've done instead is I've just stuck them in a list, in a little tick list for me. And I'm going to talk about each point briefly as to what these fixes are. Some of them we've kind of covered anyway. So the first Patreon suggestion to fix Marines in general was to improve Land Raiders. Now, they obviously got a massive points drop in chapter approved. I think some of them dropped at like 100 points if you had the twin last cannon variant. I don't know the exact numbers, but they did drop a huge amount in points. So they are definitely more affordable now, but their sort of point is not. It still doesn't kind of do what it should do. So in 7th edition, for example, so it's another core rule change. In 7th edition, for example, if you disembarked from a vehicle, you couldn't charge. Now, quite frankly, that was a stupid rule from the start. Because why wouldn't you come charging out of any kind of transport and then not make the charge? The only way you could charge is if you were open topped or you had a special rule. Land Raiders were assault vehicles, so they had a special rule that meant you could disembark and charge. But now that's gone. That's absolutely disappeared. So Land Raiders act like every other transport vehicle. Yes, you can disembark and you can still charge, because you can do that with every vehicle now. But that's all before the movement phase. So Simon suggested a fix, which I love, actually. And I think I'm not sure whether this would be a great rule, because I think it may upset some of the balance. And when I tell you what this rule is in a minute, you're probably going to agree with me. When you think that a Land Raider can move 10 inches... when it's at full health. So it moves 10 inches, and Simon's suggestion to improve Land Raiders is to allow disembarkation after moving. So you can move 10, disembark up to 3, move 6, then charge. This is the risk. You are now essentially potentially allowing turn 1 charges from Space Marines. Sounds horrific, right? Apart from Space Marines are pretty crap in combat, really. I mean, they're not great, are they? Let's be fair. Which is another thing, right? Chainswords. Also talking about bolt guns needing to be -1. Let's talk about chainswords. A chainsword, again in the narrative, they press the thumb stud, they fire up the chainsword, and they hack things limb from limb. They hack big things limb from limb. And yet, in 40k, chainswords tickle guardsmen. They give an extra attack. I like it. I think a Space Marine with a chainsaw should have 2 attacks. That's fine. But that's all they do. Why aren't chains... We actually, in 7th edition, we were trialling a house rule with the guys I used to play here, whereby we had sort of a pseudo rend rule for chainswords. So 6s became AP2, I think it was, or AP3, which was 7th edition. So like an AP -2 or AP -3 type rule, which meant that... hacking away with a chainsaw was just your normal sort of swinging and hacking away, and if you got that 6 to wound, which obviously now there are ways to buff things like to wounds, you got that 6 to wound, then you end up with an AP2 or an AP3 or equivalent AP- AP -3, and that meant that the right wound, the right placed wound of that chainsaw, the right strike from that Marine, and your opponent didn't get a save. I like that, and I think bringing something like that in for chainswords makes chainswords more narrative, more appealing. Currently, let's be fair, a squad of 10 Assault Marines are nothing but fast objective grabbers, and they're not all that great at that because their survivability is pretty pants. They can jump 12 inches from objective to objective, but who cares about 20 chainsword attacks? No one. So you see You see Assault Marines with melter guns. I'm not against Assault Marines carrying melter guns, let's be clear, but chainswords and pistols charging into combat is how Assault Marines should work, and they just don't at the moment. That's not what they do, and no one fears 20 chainsword attacks. I have 10 berserkers, and I kick out 30 chain axe attacks that are +1 strength, AP -1 to a model that's base strength 5. So I'm kicking out 30 berserkers at strength 6, 30 berserker attacks at strength 6, AP -1 without any buffs to my chainsword at all. People fear berserkers in melee, and rightly so. I then get an additional attack with my chainsword. Now, let's be fair, if I haven't murderated everything I need to murderate with my power fist and my chain axes, then the chainswords don't really make a massive difference. I think improving the power of chainsaws ever so slightly, and I don't mean a permanent AP -1, I just mean 6s become AP -2. For example, that'll do me. Maybe even 2 damage. It's a 6 to wound. I mean, Marines haven't got many ways, if any, actually, thinking about it, to buff. I'm thinking Chaos have got veterans of the Long War and stuff. We're talking about bog standard Loyalist Marines. I think 6s to AP -1 and 2 damage. Yeah, I like that. That kind of works. Viking said it in the chat, like Eldar guns. There's plenty of Eldar weaponry, like shuriken weaponry, that doesn't do anything apart from normal firepower with a normal to hit roll and a normal to wound roll. The second you roll 6s to wound, they become AP -3. Why not? Why not do that with chainswords? They're chainsaws. They're iconic Space Marine weapons that should be more damaging. Cool. Sai's suggestion, like I said, to fix Land Raiders, because we went off on a chainsword rampage, was to allow disembarking after moving. I like it. I think it's good. I think you need to be careful to sort of not make turn 1 charges super easy. Otherwise, all you'll see is people chucking as many Marines with chainsaws, power swords, etc., or power fists from Terminators into a Land Raider as possible, and making turn 1 charges on those key units of yours. Then screening becomes more important. Then we see more cultist spam, plague bearer spam, horror spam, just to provide screening units against charging Terminators. So it does sort of change the balance of the game ever so slightly. I mean, we see all those spammed units anyway, to be fair. We see the sort of screening units all over the place anyway, so it's not horrific, but that's part of what I think I would do to fix them. Then we move on to Terminators. Terminators are a massive, massive bugbear of mine, because Terminators are Terminators. Terminators are horrifically, disgustingly powerful in the narrative. Terminators are tactical dreadnought armor. They're walking tanks, and yet in the game of 40k, they're close to pants, aren't they? Let's be fair. I would use another word, but I want to edit this and put it on YouTube, so I'm reluctant to use that. I mean, they're shit. They're the shit, aren't they? The Terminators, they're just not great. You get slightly better Terminator variants if you go over to the Thousand Suns and you look at the Scarab Occult Terminators, and you get possibly even better Terminators now if you look at the Death Guard and you look at Blight Lords. So there's 3 sort of variants, pseudo variants of Terminators there, and Loyalist Terminators are shockingly poor. Why on God's green earth does a Terminator, a tactical dreadnought Terminator, a man in a suit of armour that should be able to walk through walls, why does he suffer a -1 to hit when he's firing a heavy weapon? I mean, they could pick up tanks, right? And yet he can't pick up a heavy weapon. What? This one of the biggest fixes for me is remove that negative to hit with moving and firing heavy weapons. Just get rid of it. It's crap. Thousand Suns, Scarab Occult Terminators don't have it because all is dust means they don't have it. Death Guard Blight Lord Terminators don't have it because of their I can't remember what the rule is called. They've got a special rule that means if they inexorable advance, I think it's called, so they can rapid fire up to 18 inches and they don't suffer the penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons. So they don't have it. So you've got 2 variations of the 3 variations of Terminators who don't have that rule where they cannot they suffer the penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons. Yet Loyalists suffer. Now, I'm a Chaos player. I like Death Guard, I like Thousand Suns, I like Chaos Space Marines. I'm a Chaos player. But why do the Heretics get the benefit when the Loyalists don't? Then you look at things like Invuns. So, for example, Chaos Death Guard Terminators have got Cataphractic Terminator armor, so 4+ vulnerable save. Scarab Occults have got 5 pluses, but they've got all the dust. If they get hit by a 1 damage weapon, they become a 4+ invulnerable save. Space Marines 5 up, Crux Terminators 5 up. That's it. I think that's crap. I think give them a 4+ as well. I think the suggestion we had from one of the patrons is to make Terminators toughness 5 and 3 wounds. Again, the toughness 5 thing encroaches upon Death Guard. I've just moved away from the mic, very obvious. The toughness 5 thing encroaches on the Death Guard rules, right? So toughness 5 means that they become Death Guard Terminators, and we've got Death Guard Terminators. Would you then make Death Guard toughness 6? I wouldn't. I don't think that's the right fix. 3 wounds? Yeah. I'm okay with 3 wounds for Terminators, but then there's a knock-on effect. So, for example, Blightlords, who are already 2 wounds, would have to become 3 wounds. Then you've got Death Shroud, who are currently 3 wounds. Would they become then 4 wounds to make the balance right? Then you start to encroach on Custodian Guard, who are already, and Loyalists Terminators, who are 4 wounds. Do they then become 5? And there's a massive knock-on effect to changing something so simple as the +1 wound. So I revert back to my earlier fix. Terminators ignore -1 and -2 weapons. I think you do that, they become more survivable. Small arms fire is less effective against Terminators if they do not get -1 and -2, or they do not suffer -1, -2 weapons, for me personally. Ignoring the penalty to move is the other thing I would definitely add to all Terminators. The second you're in Terminator armour of any sort, you do not suffer the penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons, in my eyes. Okay. Next one's a really hot topic. A really hot topic that this will throw people into frenzies, I think. That's the topic of a model that was sold in droves and droves and droves in 7th edition, and now you just don't see. It doesn't move. It has a Stormbolter. It sounds crap, right? And yet in 7th edition they sold loads of them. Part of the reason was because Skyhammer was a thing. So Skyhammer and Irish forces were massive, so people bought loads of them, and because they had rules that actually interacted within the game in a way in which other units couldn't. Again, the core mechanic for 8th edition changed the way that every other army interacted with certain rules, and this unit became null and void. And on top of which, because they did a whole points rebalance in 8th edition, it shot up in points. You all know what I'm talking about by now. I'm sure most of you do. Drop pods. Drop pods in 8th edition they're an auto not include. They just, why? There's so much wrong with drop pods. So 7th edition, for those of you that have only joined us in 8th and don't know what 7th edition was, 7th edition, you couldn't bring units in until turn 2 onwards. From turn 2 onwards, you had to roll for those units, and you had to roll a dice equal to a sort of table, and depending on whether you scored high enough, you could then bring in reserves. Then when you brought in reserves, it scattered. So if you deep struck a unit of troops or Terminators or whatever, you scattered. If that scatter landed on top of another unit, enemy, friendly or whatever, you suffered a mishap. You could lose your unit. They could go back into... There was loads of risk to deep striking until you had a drop pod. The second you had a drop pod, you removed all that risk. So to start with, they had a drop pod assault rule, which meant that up to 50% of your drop pods could come in on turn 1, no matter what. So that was instantly epic because there was very little else that could do that. On top of which, they had another rule, which was the inertial guidance system, off the top of my head, which meant that when you scattered, if you ended up on top of an enemy unit on your own unit, you reduced your scatter distance by the minimum possible to be able to put your drop pod down. So you can't suffer a mishap with drop pods unless you go off the table edge. So awesome units in 7th, and they were cheap. They were like 35 points or something like that. So they were incredibly good in 7th edition. Amazing units. The second half of them you did have to roll for, but you kind of accepted that. And what you had was very, very narrative marine armies, to some extent, that were full of stuff in drop pods, and you had a planet with no one on it, and then steel rain came hurtling in. To some extent, it was a little bit unbalanced. And if you looked at what was it, a dual something detachment, when they started having all the formation bonuses, there was a dual something or other. Basically, you got free transports. It became a little bit dirty, I think. I think it became a little bit dirty. But they played like they should do. They were still pretty decent. Now, 8th edition has changed. So to start with, when 8th edition changed, everyone could come in on turn 1. blanket. So that kind of made drop pods a little bit less, because they didn't need that special rule. They didn't have that special rule. No one scatters anymore. You arrive exactly where you mean to, like Gandalf. So no one scatters anymore. Drop pods, again, don't gain that rule. So what you end up with is a transport capacity that deep strikes, and there's nothing different. Bungle has followed, thank you very much. Nothing is different, so there is no benefit at all to taking drop pods. Then they skyrocket the points up. They're like 100 points in 8th edition. And when you're talking about, I mean, even Rhinos are like 70 odd points. There just seemed to be no point at all. So they're now trash. Obviously, the FAQs and chapter approved and all that sort of stuff's happened because competitive play is a thing and it has a massive influence on how the game is played. And they very quickly got rid of units being able to turn up on a deep strike on turn 1 because certain people were coming up against opponents that were deep striking in turn 1, making a charge, destroying their biggest unit. Turn 1, you lose your best unit. You don't even get to play with it. It's upsetting. I mean, people can still do that with Castellan Knights, but we won't nerf those because we're currently selling loads of them. So they stopped the deep striking on turn 1. That is a fix I wasn't against, though. I wasn't against that. I don't think that was the worst thing they could have done. Another follow from Iox Tail. You might tell me off, but thank you very much. So I wasn't dead against that rules change. I think that rules change was definitely something that needed to happen. I think it was quite important, but there was a problem, I think, whereby drop pods were useless because of the rules changes. The rules then changed again, and you had the opportunity to improve drop pods, and they didn't. So the first thing I would do with drop pods definitely is drop the points because they're too overcosted for what they do. They can be used in certain special ways. Proudbeard in the chat, you'll see on screen, has said that a friend of his has used a drop pod onto an objective and scored loads and loads of points because it just sat there. And it's kind of a waste shooting a drop pod, I suppose. I mean, they're not particularly survivable, but they also don't do a lot. So when you could be removing units that pose a threat, could cause you issues, could cause you harm, you wouldn't be destroying those rather than killing a drop pod. But he did score him 6 points, and maybe you should have destroyed the drop pod, just saying. Anyway, so I think they need to come down in points. But more importantly, I think we need to add an old sort of drop pod style assault rule to them. I don't know how we do this. I don't know how we fix it exactly. There's a couple of suggestions. So first of all, the obvious suggestion is to allow drop pods or X number of drop pods, maybe 50%, maybe 30%, I don't know, to come in on turn 1. It gives Marines something that no other army has. And let's be fair, is there all that much that's going to step out of a drop pod on turn 1 for Marines and be that horrifically devastating when you consider that Primaris can't get in them? So Stern Guard, maybe Assault Marines, Tactical Marines. There's just nothing that's that horrific at the moment that's stepping out of a drop pod. So allowing them to come in on turn 1 isn't that much of a problem, in my opinion. There's other things you can do. One of the cool rules that I came up with ages ago, and I think I've seen other people mention it as well, I love this sort of rule, it's allowing to use drop pods as a weapon. So why can't you deep strike drop pods onto enemy models and the unit underneath the drop pod suffers D3 mortal wounds or D6 mortal wounds or something like that, or you roll a dice for every model under the drop pod, and on a 4+ they suffer a mortal wound or something like that, so you can hammer your drop pod in. Once you've resolved casualties, you then move it the minimum distance you need to for it to land and open its doors. And if you, I don't know, for argument's sake, don't clear a big enough space for it, so you have to do that move, it itself suffers D3 mortal wounds because it's immobile anyway, so who cares? So I think that's one cool fix for me for drop pods. Allow them to come in on turn 1 and use them as a weapon. People have suggested in the past that the ability to drop the drop pod out, open the doors when it comes in, and then allow your models to disembark straight away and move. I don't know. Or basically what they're saying is allow them to be close to the 9 inches to the enemy. I'm not sure. The clause got it right there. Less than 9 inches would be good. I'm not sure. I don't know. So this is where the rules writing comes into effect, right? Which is something I'm not amazing at just yet. But let's say, for example, you allow them to be used as a weapon, and then they have to move the minimum distance required. At the turn they arrive, then I'd keep the doors shut, perhaps, like a Rhino running forward. You can't get your guys out. I keep the door shut. Turn 2, doors burst open, models get out. because of where you landed and you moved the minimum distance required before you could put your drop pod down. You guys get out, they're going to be closer than 9 inches away. It's fact. They're going to be. But at least your opponent has had that turn to react and go, there's Marines right there, move back, whatever. The risk you have is that someone will surround the drop pod with 30 cultists or 40 cultists and then blow it up and you can't get your guys out. That's one of the risks you play, right? So make sure your drop pods do enough damage. Hey, that's part of the keys. Right, excuse me just a second whilst I cough. Still very poorly, you see. Still very poorly. So Mikey P, who ditched us for having the Nurgle's Rot, has just said, it's a bit of a hard line. Very few things can do that. Morlocks, for example. It is. But why not give it to drop pods and Marines? Why not allow a drop pod slamming into the table to be powerful? I don't think it really breaks it all that much, in my opinion. Who knows? So there's been another suggested fix to make Marines more appealing as well, which was very interesting and yet very basic. And I'm not sure it's a fix, but I want to talk about it anyway. Increase the cost of scouts. Scouts are the go-to troops choices for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's because they're cheaper than Marines, right? And they need to be cheaper than Marines because they're scouts. Of course, they need to be cheaper than Marines for being scouts. But they're also popular for another reason. So, for example, with scouts, you can deploy them almost anywhere on the board in the whole deployment phase, and you allow yourself a bigger deep strike screen denial by having bubbles of scouts placed around, which restricts where your opponent can sort of drop in and all that kind of stuff. So, and then you can also put them on objectives that aren't in your deployment zone, which is key for things like ITC type missions, for Maelstrom missions and stuff like that, because if you've already sat on the objective with camo cloaks on and they're in ruin and what have you, then it makes them hard to shift. So scouts are better than tactical Marines for a number of reasons, not just the points cost. I do not think, I can't see the point in pushing points for scouts up when you think about the cost of a poxwalker, the cost of a cultist, the cost of a guardsman. I don't think pushing the points up for scouts is worthwhile, because if you push the points up for scouts, what you won't do, you will not increase the number of people taking Marines. You will instead increase the number of people taking guardsmen. It's as simple as that. Welcome Hellstorm Dan, by the way. Dan is part of the Hellstorm team. We had Mikey on last week. Go check out Hellstorm Wargaming because they're lads. Some of you won't understand them because they talk in Northern, but yeah, check them out. Infiltrate that Mike's put on there. Infiltrate is very powerful, more powerful than an extra +1 save attack Marine. 100% agree. That's why scouts are taken, right? It's not just because they're cheaper, but it's because they've got that infiltrate ability. So certain things like Marines having that ignoring of -1 AP and the bolter drill stuff makes them more attractive compared to scouts. Doesn't fix them necessarily, but it does make them more attractive compared to scouts. The problem I have, like I say, if you push scout cost up, you see more soup lists with Marine elites, fast attack, heavy supports with guardsman troops, because that's your cheap way of getting battalions, because it'll end up being significantly more what's the word? It's more efficient, I suppose, points efficient than taking scouts, even with the cost of a couple of company commanders. So I don't like that idea personally. The next two were pretty much hand in hand for everyone I know who plays Marines, and I've been on the opposite end of this a couple of times, and I think the second part specifically is very, very important. The first one's redo chapter tactics, the second one's redo stratagems. Marine stratagems are, I mean, let's not beat around the bush, they're awful. They're crap. I played Brom in a game, and I think it was deploymentzone.tv we played it on, and I don't think it was Warhammer. We played a game, and we said we are going to ban command point rerolls, and we're not going to use them. There's a lot of people that don't do it. A lot of people get rid of command point rerolls. I've seen it on Winter's SEO a few times. I know a lot of patrons from the channel don't like command point rerolls. Andy Byrne, for example, he's mad for it. He refuses to command point reroll. The game I filmed with Simon that goes on DZ on Tuesday removes command point rerolls. We don't use them at all, and that's real positive. I think it's good fun because you let the dice tell the story, and you add more. You basically add more variation of stratagems. However, when I played Brom and we got rid of command point rerolls, I had to give him back to him halfway through the game because he just had nothing useful to spend his stratagems on because they're so shit. They're just rubbish. Who uses kill shot?
Who uses Linebreaker Bombard? Who uses what's the orbital bombardment? Who uses the whirlwind land speeder one? Who uses any of those? No one, because they're all crap. They just don't do anything. I've played a couple of games, and we go through decks. So what I tend to do when I'm playing a game is I'll go through my deck of stratagems, and I'll pull out the ones I can use and put them in a pile, and the ones I can't use because I don't have the right model or whatever, I put away in my box, so they're not with me when I'm playing games. I tend to end up with a nice thick pile, because I don't play Marines, of stratagems I can use. Brom ends up with like 3. They're just dreadful. And something I was about to go, which which Mike's just covered in the chat, Codex creep's a thing, and I think Games Workshop have honestly got better and better and better at writing good, effective, strong stratagems that people can use with nice, decent combos. Marines were clearly one of the early ones, but saying that, the Chaos Codex, which on the whole has a lot of the similar stratagems that the Marines have got, like your kill shot for predators and stuff, I still think has a stronger deck of stratagems to use than the Marine Codex. And there's one big reason for this, in my opinion, and that is the fact that Chaos have a couple of things that I think Marines could really benefit from. So, for example, Tactical Marines are Tactical Marines. So they equal Chaos Space Marines, right? That's an obvious sort of translation. Then you've got Assault Marines, Raptors. Again, pretty much like for like. Scouts, Cultists, kind of, not quite, because Cultists can't infiltrate and they're cheaper, but you've got a cheap troop unit, essentially. And then we go on to the big issues. Khorne Berserkers, Thousand Sons, Death Guard, Noise Marines. Specialist troop choices. Thousand Sons, psychically strong, AP -2 bullets, +1 save, very survivable, all is dust type rule. Khorne Berserkers, rip stuff apart in melee. Death Guard, hard to kill him, disgustingly resilient, toughness 5. Emperor's Children, very good firepower units. We've all seen people using the I can't even say it. The stratagem for the Noise Marines, thank you. Stratagem for the Slanesh that allows you to fire twice on obliterators and stuff like that. So they've got specialities, and then you've got specialities related to those gods within the stratagems. So you've got a Khorne stratagem and a Nurgle stratagem, and so what happens is you now have power armored units that specialize. Marines don't have that, I don't think. Tell me a specialized combat Marine power armored unit. I just don't think there is one. You maybe could argue Vanguard vets, but for the cost compared to 5 Berserkers, there's zero contest, in my opinion. They don't have specialised units. They don't have specialised stratagems. Thank you, endless cacophony. They don't have specialised stratagems to go with those specialist units. This is the amazing part, you see, about doing this on Twitch and having a live chat there. I know you guys are watching on YouTube, some of you, and you can't live interact, but these guys, they keep me going and they save me when my tongue twist happens, which happens a lot when I'm drinking loads of juice because I'm still poorly. So Mike has rightly stated that Death Company are a specialised combat unit. They are, but only available to Blood Angels. So Ultramarines don't get it. White Scars don't get it. Raven Guard don't get it. They are a specialised combat unit, but they're not for all Marines. I think to some degree, in my personal opinion, Blood Angels are in a stronger place than bog standard Marines. I would also argue that Dark Angels are in a stronger place than bog standard Marines. Space Wolves, having read through that codex recently, they're crap. To be frank, they've got 1 or 2 units that are good and cost effective, like Rune Priests, but I think there are other specialist units like Wolfen and Thunderwolf Cavalry and all that kind of stuff. Nah, don't fancy that stuff at all. Only because the price is huge for those units. So the specialist Space Wolf units that are decent, the price is massive. The rest of the stuff you can get from Marine Codexes, and they kind of do it better with their specific chapter tactics, which goes on to the next point. Chapter tactics. Do you really, especially at tournament scene, ever see anything that isn't Ultramarines or Raven Guard? You don't, do you? Really? Let's be fair. Dark Angels isn't bad. Having said that, the release of Chapter Approved 2018 and the emphasis on moving around and capturing objectives really kicks the Dark Angels trait in the nuts, because they have to stand still to get it, and the new missions are encouraging people to not castle up, so you don't see it at all. That kills that trait. Blood Angels, they're decent. You see Smash Captains, but that's all you really see. What else is there? Space Wolves, +1 to hit. Are we that bothered by that in melee? No, not really. And then you've got the standard sort of chapter. We're not even going to talk about Grey Knights, by the way, because they're in a whole other different hurt locker. We're not going to cover Grey Knights. But then we talk about standard Marines. Ultramarines, being able to fall out and still fire at -1 is really, really good. But something that I honestly think should be Space Marine wide. I think all Marines and their disciplined nature, their training, should be able to fall out of combat and fire at -1. Then you can say that Ultramarines potentially don't suffer the -1. They just fall out and fire like the fly keyword. I have no problem with that. I think that's fine. Salamanders is being talked about in the chat. You guys probably can see it right now. Salamanders is good on paper, and it gives you loads of free command point rerolls, but I just don't think it's game-breakingly good. And when you think that Raven Guard's -1, the -1 trait is considered as being one of the best traits out there for multiple armies, including a Laytok and stuff like that. So that's just a go-to straight away for some people. And they did have a really good stratagem that for some reason GW then bummed. And then you've got Ultramarines, not only have a semi-decent stratagem because you can't tie some of their units up, but they get Gulliman and Tigris. I mean, that's really why you take them, because Gulliman and Tigris exists. So without Gulliman and Tigris, they might not be quite so attractive. But yeah, the others, just even Salamanders to some extent, I don't think is strong enough. I mean, Imperial Fists, White Skull. Who's seen White Skulls or Black Templars played competitively, or even Imperial Fists since the whole of 8th edition has existed? I haven't. I know I haven't in any event I've been to. And if I have seen anything of that ilk, then it tends to have been bottom of the tree, nowhere near the top of the table, and not doing all that well. So their chapter tactics are shite, and they need reworking. They need something more fitting to their narrative, stronger for them. And it doesn't need to be game-breakingly good. It doesn't need to be something that that auto wins a game. I don't want Marines to be auto win. I want it to be something that people can take and it becomes a hard decision from Ultramarines, Raven Guards, and the others. That's what I want. I want it to be a hard decision. So they do need a redo. They do need a rework. There's lots of little niggly bits that Marines do that I think they should do as standard. Like I say, falling back from combat and shooting on a -1. I think that should be a standard Marine thing. They're supposed to be tactically well drilled, so I like that. Whilst we're talking stratagems and chapter tactics, there was a comment on Discord about dropping the cost of certain stratagems. So we'll sort of slightly touch on Grey Knights. They've got a couple of stratagems for things like Storm Bolters and Scattling Silencers and what have you. And it's reducing the cost of those. Yeah, agree that. Some of them are costed far too high, and we need to drop the cost of some of those because they're just not feasible or viable at the moment. At 2 or 3 command points. It goes without saying they need everything they can to make them good, but some of these things that you give them with a single stratagem, I think maybe should be generic Marine rules anyway. Mikey P has said in the chat some of the White Dwarf formations should be good. I know I've been chatting to Steve from SM Battle Reports recently. Check out SM Battle Reports, the best written battle reports on the planet. And he's been using the Crimson Fists one. Is it Crimson Fists? I'm sure... I'm waiting for the chat to catch up. I'm sure there is a Crimson Fists. So Simon said it right there. There's a Crimson Fists new sort of trait formation thing that exists in White Dwarf, and Steve really likes it. He says it's really, really good. So that's cool. Probably says Lawrence at Tabletop Tactics seems to be the best Grey Knight player around. Probably. I mean, Lawrence is a great player, full stop, right? He's just a good player. He's done enough winning of tournaments and winning at events to know sort of what he's doing. He took Grey Knights to SM Battle Reports, SN7, No Retreat 7. And considering that No Retreat 7 and SM Battle Reports is No Retreat series are sort of restricted events, not heavily restricted, but they're restricted. So it's single faction, 2 detachments, lots of stuff that removes the ability to cheese and spam and soup. So it's one of the more sort of narrative events that exist. And he took Grey Knights to that, and he didn't fare so well. It's an event that he's won 4 out of 6 times, or 4 out of 7 times at the point in which 4 out of 6 times at the point in which he went. I think he didn't do great. He didn't do badly. He did better with his Grey Knights, which are considered one of the worst armies in 40k, than most of us did with semi-decent armies. So I'm not saying that he's crap. I'm saying that the Grey Knights just aren't in a good enough position for him to even sort of counter. He played Winters in one of the games against Winters' Knights, and Winters managed to table him with his Knights. Now, Knights aren't the strongest codex in the game by a country mile. They're doing well, but they're not the strongest. And there was just very little Lawrence could do. Winters is a decent player. Don't get me wrong. Winters is a very good player. He'll play it down sometimes, but he's a very, very good player. And poor old Lawrence didn't stand a chance. He had another game that he lost as well. I can't remember who it was against. Again, didn't really stand a chance. So that's a whole different fix, though. I've been chatting with some people about it today. So not an announcement, because this might not happen, but we're going to talk about it very, very briefly anyway, because I like tangents. But I'm in chats at the moment with potentially running a Warhammer GT tournament at some point this year. We were going to run a tournament for deploymentzone.tv, and it's just too much work for the pair of us to do. The way in which we were going to do it, because it's going to be a massive narrative event that everything links in. I'm not looking to do that because of how much effort it is. And Winters and I instead now are going to run a deploymentzone.tv open day. It is announced on the most recent DZHQ on the website. I won't tell everybody because I don't want everybody turning up. So if you want to come, you have to subscribe and watch that, and then you get to come and play and meet. So I'm now looking to potentially run a Warhammer tournament because I think it'd be cool. And one of the main reasons why I want to do this is I want to put my money where my mouth is, and I want to come up with my rules pack the way I want 40k to be played. Now, I don't mean I'm going to add in Space Marines Ignore -1 and all that kind of stuff. I'm not kicking out a full 25-page FAQ for every army. But one of the things I want to do, for example, is I want to restrict allies. So I want to say maximum 2 factions. We're going to call it 1750 points, probably. It's going to be ITC registered, all that kind of stuff. And what I want to say is, Age of Sigmar style, your secondary faction cannot be more than 25% of your overall points cost. What does that mean? A Guard army can't bolt a Castellan on the side. A Space Marine army can't bolt a Castellan on the side. An Imperial army in general can't bolt Gullyman on the side. You see where I'm going with it? You can't take a Thousand Suns list and add in Mortarion. You just can't do it. So that's one of the restrictions I'm looking at adding. So someone said, where is it? I've seen it. Viking, I would like to see more tournaments take the same route as SN with allying armies. That's one of the things I'm looking to do. SN do allow allies. They do allow allies, but you are restricted. So one of the things I would say with allies in this particular event is you will get your trait if you make a detachment of allies. And I say 25%. This is open to change depending on how it works with certain armies. So it might be that I got to 2,000 points and call it 25%. Might stay at 1,750 and call it 30%. I want to be able to make sure that people taking allies, they can take a detachment rather than take nothing at all. We're going to allow that detachment to gain the trait. So if the detachment is Ultramarines as an allied detachment, you will get the ability to fall out and fire Overwatch, not fire Overwatch, but shoot at -1. What you won't have is access to stratagems. You won't have access to warlord traits. You won't have access to relics. You'll just get the army trait because I think that's more narrative. Your warlord will have to come from your primary faction, so your 75% faction. I think it's a really nice fix. We spoke about it with Mikey from Hellstorm last week on the last podcast when we were talking about ITC. It's something that comes kind of from Aegis. It's kind of lifted out of Age of Sigmar. Done ever so slightly differently. I think it's an elegant and eloquent fix to sort of soup out, but allow. I don't want to kill soup. To start with, I just wanted to get rid of soup. I wanted to destroy it altogether. But actually, I think there's massive narrative reasons for keeping soup, so I don't want to get rid of it. So I think that's probably the best thing we can do. Cool. Right. Where are we going to go? So the next one. This links again to the last point. The next point that we had was about chapter tactics and having chapter tactics affect all units. Games Workshop have shown that this is something that can work because they do it for Eldar. They do it for most Necrons, I think. They do it for Tau. where everything in the army benefits, with the exception of certain keywords. So, for example, with Necrons, Triarch units, Triarch Stalkers, Triarch Praetorians, they don't get the dynastic code because they're the Triarch, and the Triarch sit outside of the dynasty, and the Triarch are like the sort of law enforcers, I suppose, of the dynasty. So some armies, there are models and units that don't get the bonuses and the benefits because they sit outside of the core of the army, and they're like bolt-on auxiliary forces, I suppose. Eldar, however, for example, their whole force gets the benefit and the bonus. So why don't Marines? Why don't Death Guard? Why don't Thousand Sons? Why don't the Astartes whole army get the benefit? Would it really, really, really hurt to allow Predators to fall out of combat as Ultramarine Predators and open fire at -1? I don't think it would. Which brings me to another point. Why on earth have Space Marine vehicles not all got power of the Machine Spirit? I don't get it. Since when, in the narrative, did Land Raiders have power of the Machine Spirit and Storm Ravens have power of the Machine Spirit and a Predator doesn't? They've always had it. They've always got a Machine Spirit. So why not have power of the Machine Spirit? Why are these great hulking, great big Marine tanks, much like Terminators, suffering -1 to hit for firing heavy weapons? I get it on fast vehicles, perhaps. I get it on a big lumbering heavy weapon on a fast vehicle. But I just don't get it on Space Marine tanks that have got the power of the Machine Spirit. I'm very aware that if we did all of these fixes all in one go, that there is a potential we turn Marines into an auto-win army, and I don't want to do that. But we actually just got to look at the LVO and realise that top 8 in the LVO, not a single Marine player really in the whole of the top 8, and you realise that they're in a bad way and they do need fixes. Jack in the chat has just said guard tanks, turret weapons don't. So why does a guard Lehman Russ, crewed by a guardsman, not suffer the penalty for moving and firing a heavy weapon, but a Predator, crewed by a Space Marine, does? There you go. There's your answer. So get power of the Machine Spirit in there. Give tanks chapter tactics. There we go. That improves things straight away. I mean, you will see more Ultramarines and Raven Guard, because tanks at -1 or tanks being able to fall out of combat when you're locked up is huge. But you might even see more Salamanders, because having a Predator with a last cannon that you can reroll a hit and reroll the wound and stuff like that is kind of a big deal, I think. So that's cool. People have suggested that we also need to improve or increase Gullyman's points. As a Primarch goes, I hate Gullyman. And I'm going to be very aware of the time. I don't want to disappear off on a tangent about hating Gullyman. Apparently, he said yes to the Primaris, so it's all his fault anyway. But I think his points are about right now, points-wise. I think they're about right. I hate him because I don't like the fact that the two Primarchs I would like to currently run, because they're Chaos, are big, lumbering, huge things that can be targeted from turn 1 and normally killed. And Gullyman, who's about 14 times the size of a Space Marine, if you look at the model, can't be targeted. I mean, really? Look at the size of him when you stand him next to a scout. And you're telling me that you stand Gullyman behind 5 scouts and he can hide? I mean, really? He can hide behind scouts? No. No, he can't. I've said it. He shouldn't be. He shouldn't. Increase his wounds. By all means, increase his wounds. Stick him on 14, 15, 16 wounds. Happy with that. There's no way. Look at the size of him. I can't. The size of him compared to scouts. There's absolutely no way on this earth that he should be able to hide behind scouts or Marines or aggressors or anything, because he's huge. So I think that's crap. That's my biggest bugbear, is the fact that he can be targeted, because you can wrap him in stuff, walk around with your reroll to hit roll, reroll to wound rolls castle. And I mean, I was watching a battle report recently on Tabletop Tactics, and it was Death Guard versus Ultramarines, and Lawrence took Gullyman, he took a Storm Raven, and lots of other heavy bolter stuff. I think he took Hurricane Bolter Centurions, because, you know, Bolter, Beta, Bolter Drill. Hello, Sorcerer Dave. He's just joined us. Bolter Beta Drill. Yeah, that one. That's a thing now. So he took lots of Bolter Beta stuff. Beta Bolter stuff. I'll do that forever otherwise. And he surrounded Gullyman with it. So, and this is the thing, can't target Gullyman because he's a character, and everything gets rerolled to hits and to wounds. So I think Gullyman doesn't need a points increase. I would just chuck his wounds up and allow him to be targeted, and I think that's fine. Otherwise, I don't think he's that horrific. Brom took him to confrontation in Portsmouth back end of last year, and he used them differently, which was awesome. He used Gullyman to charge forward and slice stuff up. I love that. That was cool. So I was all okay with that one, but I just don't think he needs a massive points hike, and especially when you consider when you're talking auto include units for Marines. I wouldn't suggest that Gullyman's an auto include. He's amazing. He's an amazing force multiplier, and in Ultramarines competitive lists, is he a must take? Maybe, but for the current sort of meta and the way it exists, Marine players are more likely to drop those same points on most of a Castellan than they are on Gullyman. He's not an auto include, so I don't think he needs a massive points hike. The only thing that bugs me with him is because he's a Primarch and because he's Ultramarines. That's part of the reason why I think personally you see so many Ultramarines armies as opposed to other chapters. We've already discussed the fact that the other chapter tactics on the whole are pretty crap, with the exception of Raven Guard and maybe Salamanders. So I think perhaps as a Primarch, a Loyalist Primarch, he could, I don't know, because he can buff other. I'm not going to go down that dangerous track of saying that he gives his buffs to every force, because then you'll just see Raven Guard armies with a Gullyman bolted on, and that's not what we want. Because Gullyman should be in blue armour, Mikey from Hellstorm. People that know him know what I'm on about. I don't think he needs a points hike. I think we can leave him alone on the whole point. But I honestly, I would stick his wounds up to sort of 14 wounds or something, and allow him to be targeted. Because with his 3+ natural and vulnerable, that's the other thing, right? So he can't be targeted, and he can hide behind, as a 25-foot Primarch, he can hide behind a 3-foot scout. But he's also got a 3+ natural vulnerable save, and Magnus and Mortarion have only got 4-ups. Yeah, there's a balancing issue there for me. So. Cool, we've covered that. The next point, change the core way the army works and change the way Primus differ from standard. So this is kind of what we're talking about. The core way the army works, the survivability does change the core way that it works. Changing things like drop pods and land raiders, it changes the core way the army can work. Marines should be, as tactical Marines, they should be jack of all trades. Terminators for me should be feared. They should be absolutely categorically feared because they're Terminators. I don't mind their... Was it Lawrence who said this recently on a battle report? I don't mind their points staying or being high as long as their abilities reflect that, and that's what I think the issue is. I want Terminators. I don't want to see someone... There's a list that went up in Hellstorm, in the Hellstorm WhatsApp chat today or yesterday, that existed yesterday at Sanctuary in a tournament scene, and he had 3 squads of 5 scouts. He has Tellian, he had Tigris, and then he had Gullyman, obviously, and then he had 3 squads of 10 Terminators. I'm not sure in a 1750 point battle report or battle or game I want to see 30 Terminators, because they should be rare and elite, but I also want them to be feared. Now, because he had Gullyman, with the new Beta Bolter discipline, someone's just told me off, the Beta Bolter discipline, with Gullyman, they're actually very, very strong on damage output, very, very good. But I think Terminators need to be more feared. For example, why do Terminators suffer... This is it. So we've already said Terminators should not suffer the -1 to move and hit with heavy weapons like assault cannons and stuff. Why do they suffer the -1 to swing a power fist? It's part of their armour. Their armour is powered up to swing power fists. They shouldn't... They only get 2 attacks each. That's crap anyway. So 2 attacks each from 5 Terminators with a 4-up to hit means mathematically you're hitting 5 times the power fist. It's just not that good. It really isn't. When you think that on the charge, a Berserker Champion's got 3 attacks of a fist on his own. He's not a Terminator. So I think get rid of that -1 to hit for Terminators. I'm okay with -1 to hit a power fist on a Space Marine Sergeant. I'm okay with -1 to hit a power fist on my Berserker Champion. Terminators, nah. They should not be -1 to hit. Terminators for me should still be hitting on 3s with power fists, because that makes them dangerous, right? There's other things people would like to see to improve Marines, which come away from bog standard Space Marines. I didn't want to talk about this very much, but one of them was about Transports Primaris. I will go on record as saying that I actually think that I just don't think that we need to worry about that at the moment, because we've just seen, so we had the standard Primaris release. We've now got the Vanguard type release coming out. We've got snipers and this new librarian. I wouldn't be surprised within the next 6 to 12 months to see new Primaris transports. I just don't think that's going to be a concern. It says transports for Primaris. The one thing that is odd is, why can't Marines get into a transport with normal Primaris? Why can't Primaris Marines get into a transport with Marines? What do they not like each other? I mean, I guess the Dark Angels, that's understandable. I guess Dark Angels wouldn't like Primaris because they don't want to tell them all their secrets. But I don't understand why. I don't understand why they won't get in a Rhino or a Land Raider. Are you telling me that a Land Raider, which is basically the same size as that horrible floaty tank thing, the repulsive, do you not think that Primaris Marines can fit in that? I think they probably could. I would say they could, but they won't get in there with normal Marines. Odd. It's a weird place currently for those. So that's a lot of the fixes we've gone through to fix them. I think there's loads of stuff there. I think if you look at all those fixes, there is a strong possibility that we could do something with Marines here that makes them significantly stronger than they currently were. And I think a lot of those fixes don't break them as well. That's the key. Anyone who's a Marine fan will chuck you 20 fixes that make them insanely powerful. Anyone who's we've been talking about them. Anyone who's a Death Guard fan will chuck you 20 fixes for Death Guard that make them insanely powerful, because we all want our armies to be the best, because they're our armies. Of course we do. I think a lot of what we've discussed here today doesn't necessarily break them. That's the key. It doesn't break them. So, Max Vane, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. It doesn't break them at all. It just sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? It does push them closer to the narrative. It doesn't break them. It just strengthens them and allows them to have a stronger mono build where they don't need to be filled with guardsmen and a Castellan Knight to be remotely close to competitive. And actually, the only Marine contingent you see on the board at 1750 is 3 captains with Thunderhammers and Storm Shields. I don't like that. So, ignore -1 for Marines, ignore -2 for Terminators, ignore the -1s to hit for Terminators because they're Terminators. Redo chapter tactics is key because there's 2 that are good and the rest are pretty much rubbish. And as we've mentioned, the biggest problem we've got for Marines is they haven't changed their rules really since 7th edition massively, and the game has massively changed. And if you look at the way some armies now interact with 8th edition, they interact relatively well with the edition. A lot of them have got massive buffs from the edition because -1s are a thing now and -2s are a thing. Marines have stayed where they were, and that's really stung them. However, there's a little section I've got on my OneNote that says controversial points, where some of the guys in Discord, when I asked this question, came up with some controversial points which might upset people, but I want to talk about them anyway because there's some really interesting viewpoints from people who are people that are in our Discord. They're part of our community. They're reasonable folk. They're not interested in dick smashing competitive lists. They're not interested in going and winning the LVO or ITC, and yet they have made these comments and they're very interesting. So the two of them are kind of, I think they're kind of linked, these first two, where one says Marines are where they should be, and one says they're a starter army. The Claw, I know specifically, is the one who said they're a starter army. He sees Marines as easy 40k. Simple rules, simple models. You turn up, you've never played 40k before. What army do I do? There's your poster boy, Space Marines. Have some Space Marines. They're quite simple rules. There's none of this crazy -1 malarkey. Everything's quite simple. So you do that. You build your bog standard Marines who are sort of okay at everything. So they're average at combat. They're average at shooting. They're average at surviving, etc. We're not talking competitive now. We're talking sort of everyday 40k. So they're average at everything. People get used to the game, learn the rules with these average models with average rules that are pretty standard, and then you want to specialise, and you want to specialise in psychics. So you might look at Thousand Suns or Grey Knights or Eldar, or you want to specialise in manoeuvrability. You might look at Harlequins or whatever. You know, there's lots of different sort of special armies out there that you can go out there. Melee, you might look at Nids or World Eaters or Orcs even. So people are suggesting that they're a starter army and they shouldn't be that good because maybe GW are trying to encourage people to break off into a specialist army after they've built their standard army. The other one is that they're where they should be. That was Redtooth, I think, in Discord who said this. Marines are where they should be. That's very controversial because there's a lot of top players out there that are saying they're not. But this is the interesting point. It's the top players who are saying they're not where they should be. So these are the people that do want lists and armies that they put together and they go and sort of curb stomp their opponents. Now, for the whole of 8th edition and for most of 7th edition, I've played Brom at 40k. You've probably seen him on the channel. And he plays Space Marines. And he plays Space Marines. And Space Marines. And Space Marines. And Space... And he has probably won as many as he's lost against me, because we don't play hyper-competitive stuff. And he really enjoys it. There is the issue with stratagems that we spoke about with Brom, whereby if he didn't have command point rerolls and he takes the units that he wants to take, he basically then doesn't have any stratagems to use. That's a problem, and I think that needs to be addressed. But he still enjoys using them. They still stand a chance, and in most games we've played, we always feel like there is a way in which he can claw the game back because they're Marines. So I honestly think that there is some, although controversial, there is some sustenance to the fact that Marines are perhaps where they should be and where GW want them. So this then brings me on to the third and final controversial point, which links, I think, the previous two in quite nicely. It says they won't go up in points and they won't improve because GW are in the business of selling models. This is very controversial, and we don't like to necessarily admit this as GW fans and Warhammer fans, but they are a business, right? They are selling models. So it could be conceivable that they are a starter army and GW want people to go off and specialise, in which case they're going to go off and specialise on a different army that's a little bit more competitive. It might be that we're looking at them as Primaris, the new true scale, and GW want people to buy Primaris because that's a new model range. And let's face it, because Space Marines have been the poster boy for so long, they probably have sold a bucket load of Space Marines already. The narrative has started to stagnate. The model range has started to stagnate. They weren't quite the right size they were supposed to be. GW have dropped this Primaris bomb, and that's what they want you to buy, Primaris Marines. I mean, they've got 45 lieutenants, so you can only imagine that there's going to be more of a model range coming out behind to back those up. That's what they're focusing on. When was the last Space Marine release that wasn't Primaris? A kit, the Vanguard Veteran kit, the Sternguard Veteran kit. It was a long time ago. So it is conceivable that they're just not going to continue to push these Marines, that we won't see any. So one of the things I've been screaming for ages, for example, is a new Space Marine bike kit. I don't think we're going to see one, because I think we're going to see Primaris in some sort of speed form, whether it be bikes or jet bikes or something, I don't know. I think we'll see Primaris. So there is the theory out there, and it came from Patreon, didn't come from me, it came from a patron, that says that GW are in the business selling models, and that's why Space Marines won't actually change. And like I've said at the very, very beginning of the podcast, or the live stream, or the video on YouTube, depending on how you're watching this, they have already shown GW that the only way they're going to improve or fix models is, or fix rules is to drop points, and that's a shame. Toys to Toy God said they did a load of Space Marine heroes in Japan. Were they normal Marines, were they? Or were they Primaris stuff? I haven't seen them because I'm not in Japan. But I suppose there's the thing is with Japan and places like that is that they're a completely different audience, right? So I don't know. Anyway, that is a theory, and I think there's some legs to that as well, because I honestly believe that there's a possibility that we are going to maybe see the removal of mini Marines. This moves into the last part of the Twitch stream and of the podcast, before I then wrap up and say my goodbyes and remind you of my nice announcement. Do we want to see the end of mini Marines? I asked for questions, I only got 2. Do we want to see the end of mini Marines? Yes and no. I do and I don't. At the moment, the Primaris Marine sculpts as models are significantly nicer. Okay, they are so much nicer than the normal Marines. I'll go on. I don't like the Primaris narrative. I don't like them, but I will go on camera saying that they are the nicest sculpts for Marines that I think I've ever seen for Loyalist stuff. The new Primaris stuff is just kicking it out of the park. The only ones I don't like are what Winters calls the jumpy dudes, the Interceptors, I think they're called. Don't like those. I think they look a bit derpy, but Hellblasters are gorgeous. Intercessor kits are amazing. The new stuff they're showing, the snipers, the new librarian sculpt is just drop dead gorgeous. That thing, I think it's amazing. So the sculpts are incredible. So they are kicking backside, but I don't want to lose the feel of old school Marines. So until an Interceptor squad, basically a Primaris tactical squad, can take tactical squad type weapons, and they've started it because the sergeant can now take a power fist. Until they can take tactical type weapons, I don't want to lose mini Marines yet. I just don't want to lose them yet, because I like the way a tactical squad works, because tactical squads exist in the fluff. If they start to allow interceptors to take flamers and interceptors to take heavy bolters and stuff, I think I'll be more inclined to say, okay, I'm okay with the phasing out of mini Marines now. I don't mind that too much. For example, they're going to phase out mini Marines for Chaos. We know this because we've just seen the true scale Chaos Marines that have been released with the new Vigilus stuff that's coming out at the LVO. No one cares that they're getting to get rid of the mini Chaos Marines, really. No one really cares, because they're getting a new kit and it's the same stuff. So you can have the same options. It's the same type of unit and stuff. You don't completely null and void a whole unit. So I think, do I think we will see them phase out? Yes. Do I want to see them phase out? Not yet. I want the Primaris range to be complete and to be able to cover every base and every angle before they get rid of mini Marines. So the last question I had, which was from the podcast stuff we put in Discord, was what 5 things would I change for Marines? I've covered most of them. We'll go over the 5 specifics. I want Space Marines and Terminators to not suffer the penalty for -1 for Space Marines and -1 and 2 for Terminators. I think that makes them more durable, that gives them some sustenance, and doesn't encroach on other units like Death Guard, like we've said, and like Primaris Marines. I would like to see a rule that improves chainswords. So like I said, 6s are AP -2 and maybe flat 2 damage to wound. Nothing more fancy than that, just that. I would love to see drop pods improve massively and become usable again. I really, really want drop pods to be a thing, because they are so narrative, it's unbelievable, and we don't see any ever. So I think that is a key for me. Point number 4, Terminators for me should, as I've said already, not suffer the -1 to hit with heavy weapons and moving, and not suffer the -1 for things like power fists, because they're Terminators, so they shouldn't suffer that at all. And the last one is a bit of a toss-up between either Power the Machine Spirit for all the Space Marine tanks or Chapter Tactics for all units. And I think I'm going to fall down on the side of Chapter Tactics for all units, just because it's something we've seen already with other forces, other armies, other factions. So I think it's quite conceivable we can give that to Marines and Heretic Astartes and stuff like that. So that's the 5 things I would change. There we go. That's it. That's the questions we had. So. And we'll wrap this up for you wonderful folks watching us on YouTube. We'll hang around for a little bit longer in the Twitch chat. I'm going to have to run to the bathroom in a minute anyway. And then that will be that. And I've got to go to bed because I've got work in the morning. So thank you ever so much for joining us on this sit and talk / live stream / podcast. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. It's been massive amounts of fun. Like I said, a reminder, something that I announced right at the beginning of the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, at the point in which this video goes live on YouTube, it will be free to join Discord for 7 days. 7 days. At the end of those 7 days, if you have then taken out a Patreon subscription, you can stay in Discord and join us on all the fun stuff. If, however, you have decided it's not for you and you don't like it and you haven't taken out a Patreon subscription, then we'll be removing everyone who hasn't got an active Patreon subscription. So at the point in which this video goes live, you've got 7 days. That's because Mike and I are very, 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 very confident that when you join in and you have a taste of that Discord for a couple of days, you're going to want to stay. At $2 a month, I guarantee you're going to want to stay. I might be wrong. I think I'm not. Plenty of people have tried it and stayed and then increased their pledge and all kinds of stuff. So I'm really confident that people will come and join it. And that's a massive thank you to Stylus, who's one of the patrons, for giving us that idea. What a legend. There is currently a competition being run for DeploymentZone.tv. If you're a DeploymentZone.tv subscriber on the 1st of March, you'll be entered into a prize giveaway. We're giving away 3 different 6x4 foot battle mats to anyone who's a DeploymentZone.tv subscriber on the 1st of March. So check out that. We've got competitions running in Discord for patrons. So you guys who haven't done your fluff for the army that you guys know that's coming, get it done, get it in, because that army's turning up soon. It's been shipped to me on Friday, just gone. It'll be here within the next week, I reckon. So get your fluff in. We've got 6 or 7 or 8 entries already so far that Mike and I are going through English. I'm struggling now because I'm dying for the toilet. So yeah, get your fluff in. I've said already, if you haven't checked out DeploymentZone.tv, check it out. Make sure you check out Hellstorm Wargaming, because Mikey was on the chat last week and Dan's been in the chat today. Check them out. They're awesome. A huge thank you to all of my patrons. You guys are awesome, and you give me this content and then you come and join me on here and you have a chat with me all night for 2 hours. It's amazing. So a massive thank you to you guys. I'm sure I'll continue to talk to you in a minute, and I'll talk to you in Discord and all kinds of stuff. So thank you very much, you guys. You're awesome. And finally, a big shout out goes to Element Games, our sponsor. It says it up at the top. Oh, up the top there, it says sponsored by Element Games. So thank you, you guys. Matt, you're awesome, and he's hopefully going to help me organise an event soon. Whoop whoop. So keep your eye out for that. I think I've covered everything. So thank you for watching, you guys, on YouTube. We will see you in the next one.